Good morning. Your boy is back. Snapzilla Gorilla, aka The Definition, aka whatever else the fuck I said. Give people a chance to get up in here, man, before I start flambeing, sauteing this motherfucker. This time, I'm going to cook the court, the Supreme Court, because they tripping. But what do we expect, right? What do we expect? What do we expect? Nothing more than to get screwed over by government entities. And we're going to get into that, y'all. We're going to get into it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, they got life fucked up in the Supreme Court. They got life fucked up. They got life fucked up. And that's why you can't rely on any court to do the right thing by the people. To do the right thing by the people. And today in particular, we're going to go over the Supreme Court decision to uphold firearm prohibition to individuals that have been, hit with a domestic violence restraining order without due process. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what this is. This is in regard to the Rahimi case, where Rahimi is an individual who entered into a domestic violence restraining order with his girlfriend, and they came to take his firearms, right? They came to they confiscated. They came to take his firearms because, well, he ended up getting in trouble because once you get hit with a domestic violence restraining order, you are prohibited from owning firearms. You're no longer able to do that, even though you haven't been convicted of domestic violence, right? Convicted, right? There is no conviction in place. There is no due process. So without due process, they can restrict you from owning a firearm if you are a subject of a domestic violence restraining order. Okay? If you have been deemed a danger, if you have been adjudicated as being a danger to your intimate partner or child, you are subject to having your rights taken away. It doesn't matter what led to this restraining order. It doesn't matter why the partner did it, whether he or she made something up, or whatever they did, or whether she felt or perceived, he or she may have perceived that you are indeed a threat to her or him or your child. Is completely subjective, right? It does not have to be proven. So they can take your firearms. They can restrict you from being able to have firearms because of this. And so the district court, after the Bruin decision from the Supreme Court, they had only two means to determine whether or not a law or something is constitutional, and that is through the text of the Second Amendment and history and tradition, right? History and tradition, not just something 50 years ago, right? It has to go all the way back to the inception of the Second Amendment, right? It has to go back that far. And in making their case, the government, who wanted this to stay in place, right? Wanted the ability to strip someone of their right to keep their arms in place without due process because of the domestic violence restraining order, used two laws in history that it was a desperate attempt, right? Both of these laws had to do with the British British crown, right? Back when, you know, Great Britain had control over the United States before the Revolutionary War. Now, these are not American laws, so they do not apply. These are laws that were created by a despot, right, from across the pond, right, just so to speak. And so that's what they use. It doesn't apply. It doesn't count because those are not American laws, American man-made laws, which, you know, that's a whole different ball of wax. So the Supreme Court, when it reached the Supreme Court, the Rahimi case reached the Supreme Court, they decided, the Supreme Court, to uphold this Constitution violating law, this Constitution violating piece of legislation. It's not really even legislation. It's not even, right, or whatever it is. It's unconstitutional. They decided to uphold it in an 8-1 decision. Clarence Thomas being the dissenter. So Clarence Thomas, of all the 9 judges in the Supreme Court, was the only one, the only justice to disagree, to dissent, to say that no, this is an unconstitutional law, right? It cannot stand. It should not stand, based on the Bruin decision, based on not only the Bruin decision, but the Heller decision. The Heller decision states that you do have a right, and individuals have a right to keep and bear arms for protection in and outside of the home. And when you're talking about that, you're talking about an individual who has not been convicted of a felony, right? Rahimi was not convicted of a felony. He was a subject of a domestic violence restraining order where there was no criminal conviction. This is a blatant violation of the Second Amendment, a blatant violation. But more importantly, it is a blatant violation of human rights. It is a human violation of rights. Is a human rights violation. Human violations of rights. It is a human rights violation. It should not stand. It should not have stand, and this is a big problem. And this is why the 3 branch of government nonsense is just that, right? The idea of checks and balances, the idea of a separation of power is an illusion, right? They want to give you the illusion that there's a separation of power between these 3 branches of government. But really, all they're doing is sharing power, right? And depending on the situation, one branch has ultimate power over the others. And really, the only branch with true power within this government's framework is the executive branch. Why is that? Why is it that the executive branch why is it, oh shit, 9:30? All right, I might have to make a phone call. All right, so anyway, why is it that shit, anyway, Second Amendment violation, and what was I saying? I got distracted by a message. Anyway, Sunshine, what is good? What is good? Sunshine, I ain't seen you in a minute. It's been a hot minute since I seen you. Wow. Much love to you, Queen. Thank you for reaching out. But anyway, hey, Sunshine, hit me up. You got my email address? Anyway, hit your boy up. Anyway, so listen. Oh, again, the separation of power is an illusion. It's not a separation of power. It is just a sharing of power. And the only branch with true power is the executive branch. Yeah, been handling narcissists? That's funny. Don't we all? Don't we all handle narcissists to a degree? So the only real branch that has any true power is the executive branch. Why is that? Because the executive branch is essentially the enforcement branch of the government. So they enforce the laws. They enforce the laws. And they are responsible for basically keeping the peace. And what do they keeping the peace, right? And what do they have at their disposal? What do they have at their disposal that allows them to do that? Well, law enforcement officers, law enforcement agencies. The only branch of government that has control over all law enforcement in the country is the executive branch. Not only do they have control over all the law enforcement agencies and whatnot, they also have complete control over the military, right? The only branch that has any say on what, the only other branch that has any say over what the military does is the congressional branch or the legislative branch, because they have to be the ones to declare the war, right? So they declare the war, right? So they're the ones that can say, okay, we can go to war or not. But as we know, history has shown us that the executive branch has managed to utilize the military as they saw fit without Congress, without approval from Congress. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you can see that it's all just a bunch of nonsense. So let's think about this. If the Supreme Court, right, which is part of the judicial branch, right, and the judicial branch is responsible for basically interpreting laws. They interpret the laws. They interpret them. The Supreme Court is the ultimate interpreter of laws. So let's say that the Supreme Court rules against the executive branch or rules against the legislative branch, right? They say, okay, what you're doing is unconstitutional. This law is unconstitutional. The acts of this executive branch is unconstitutional. And they rule that, and they say this is what it is. Well, think about it. How are they going to enforce it? How are they going to enforce what they interpret of the law, whether they deem it unconstitutional or not? Because they don't have police, right? The Supreme Court can't have anyone arrested. They can't. They can't call for arrest. They can't do any of that. So if the legislative branch violates a Supreme Court ruling by, entering into law an unconstitutional bill, what is the Supreme Court going to do about it? What are they going to do? They're going to have the legislators arrested for violating the Constitution? How are they going to do that? If the only branch that has arresting power is the executive branch. How are they going to do that? If the executive branch says, no, we're not going to do anything about this, what power does the Supreme Court really have? Think about that. Sean Killen says he didn't know this. Well, it is what it is. The Supreme Court just ruled against the rights of the individual to keep and bear arms. If you have a domestic violence restraining order that you are subject to a domestic violence restraining order without due process. I mean, there is some process. You got to it has to be adjudicated, but there needs not be a conviction, right? So there's that. But if, like I said, if the legislative branch violates the Constitution and they and they do something that the Supreme Court has ruled unconstitutional, right? Which essentially means that you have conspired to violate the rights of an individual, you know, which is a violation of 18 U.S. Code 241. Who's going to enforce it? If the executive branch says, nah, we're going to allow this to stand, the Supreme Court can't call for the arrest of anybody. Just like if the legislative branch, right, if the executive branch violates a law or violates the Constitution, the Supreme Court or the legislative branch, they don't have arrest powers. They cannot utilize law enforcement to arrest anyone. They can hold you in contempt, right? There are little committees. The committees in the court can hold somebody in contempt, can hold a member of the executive branch in contempt. But it's up to the Justice Department to actually decide to make the arrest. And as we saw with Merrick Garland, you know, I think it was what committee it was. I think it was a congressional committee or one of those committees held Merrick Garland in contempt. But Merrick Garland is a member of the executive branch. He is the head of the Department of Justice, the DOJ, right? Attorney General Merrick Garland. He is the top lawyer, the top prosecutor. And the Justice Department said, nah, we're not going to arrest him. No, we're not going to do shit. See, that just shows you right there. The branch with the real power is the executive branch. And they allow the other two branches to, you know, have the illusion that they have some power. Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's just not it's not the case. So I just hope that we can understand this, right? As people, as the people of the United States of America, right? As the people of this country, we have to understand that the only branch with true power is the executive branch, and they exercise it as they see fit, right? As you can see with what's going on with the Trump and the kangaroo court and all that. Yeah, y'all know how I feel about it. I don't really, it's all a dog and pony show. But they have shown time and time again, the Justice Department and other, you know, and other district attorneys and whatnot in other states, that they can, because understand that prosecution, you know, they utilize the executive branch to do what they want, right? Now they're officers of the court, right? Prosecutors. But they have some level of control over the executive branch, right? They are the ones that tell the police departments, yo, you can go ahead and arrest this person, right? We have gotten a warrant, blah, 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 and all this type of shit. They're the ones responsible for deciding. They have discretion, right, in deciding who they are going to prosecute. They have the discretion in deciding and putting on a grand jury and convincing a grand jury that someone does need to be indicted, right? They have this power, right? And once that indictment is in place, they give the executive branch, they give the police departments or whatnot the go ahead to make the arrest, to do what they got to do, to hold someone in custody. You know, and this is what we got going on. Policies and rulings. Was shot killings in the building was good. Sunshine says some of the legislation are criminals themselves. Exactly. They're all criminals, right? The members of the legislative branch, members of the executive branch, members of the Judicial branch are all they're all chock full of criminals. You know what I'm saying? And this is really what you got, man. So the separation of power is an illusion, right? The separation of power is an illusion. They all work together to wield the power. But the branch with the ultimate power is the executive branch. This is what it is, you know. So that's what we got. That's what we got. And the Supreme Court has shown us that they are impotent and incompetent. And if you look at Clarence Thomas's opinion on this latest debacle, this latest failure of the Supreme Court, he explains why, right? They're incompetent, why they are, you know, impotent. You know, it just, listen, man, at the end of the day, we have to stop relying on the Supreme Court to fix everything for us, to ensure that our rights are intact. We have to stop that. We have to take it upon ourselves and take personal responsibility and accept the fact that excuse me, we are in control of our own destiny. We have to ensure our own freedom, and any freedoms that were taken from us, we are responsible for getting them back. I mean, it took years for the Supreme Court to get this in front of them and make this decision. The Rahimi thing started in 2020, and it took 4 years for the Supreme Court to say, yeah, you are allowed to violate an individual's rights in this manner. Never mind the ruling we made in Bruin, right? Never mind that. No, we're gonna be completely contradictory, and we're gonna make the ruling in this case go against what we said in Bruin. So, very sad. Sunshine says, so you have the entire system set up by criminals, legislating other criminals, creating policies with a criminal mind. Exactly. It's a criminal database. It's a cluster of criminals dictating how, you know, we go through life, right? That's what we got going on. And you know, I just hope that one day we can hopefully one day we can finally wake up and do what we need to do to get free, right? By any means necessary, like Shad Killing said. By any means necessary. Because that's what they use, right? To maintain their power, to maintain their control, to keep things the way they want it to be. They do it by any means necessary. And if we aren't willing to do that, well, how badly do we really want freedom? And they understand, many people do not want freedom. They don't. Many people want to have their lives dictated, right? They want rulers. They want people to tell them how they should live and what they should do. You know, they can barely get up out of bed in the morning and go through life without someone telling them how to do it, right? And so, you know, that is the problem that we're having, right? That's the problem we're having. And the Supreme Court just let us know that, like, look, man, the Supreme Court is not going to save you. Stop, but you know, I know a lot of these different channels mean well, and you know, all these Pro 2A channels, they mean well, and they look to the Supreme Court every single time to make the right decision once something comes in front of them, and they get very excited when the Supreme Court takes up cases. But For me, it's a toss-up. Every time the Supreme Court gets a Second Amendment case in front of them, or anything that has to do with, determining how much freedom we have, it's a toss-up. It's a toss-up. So that's one thing we should understand. We need to understand that allowing our freedom to be determined, the level of freedoms we have, allowing that to be determined by the Supreme Court is a huge gamble that, we really cannot afford that for too much longer. This is not sustainable. This model is not sustainable forever. Now, it's the longest existing and longest living constitution in the world that we have, but that's only because it is a living document and it's very fluid. It is deliberately ambiguous. It's deliberately ambiguous because they want it to be molded and shaped and evolve through time with legislation and all that type of shit. So really, we're hanging our hopes on a constitution and a Supreme Court that we really should not be relying on, right? It should not be something that we look to solidify and codify our individual freedoms. We're responsible for our own freedoms, right? Just like we're responsible for our own safety, we're responsible for our own actions. And it's really up to us to win our freedoms and maintain our freedoms. That's really what it is. And people can come together as a community to build a stronger defense against anyone who would come against our freedoms. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. But you put it in the hands, few are all to act in they're going to act in their own interest and in the interest of the people that grease their palms. Understand that. I was explaining the other day, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that the United States government, or any government in general, is organized crime. And organized crime benefits who? It benefits the capos and it benefits the goddamn dons. That's what it benefits. It doesn't benefit the pork store owner or the coffee, the mom and pop coffee joint or the butcher shop. It doesn't benefit them the way it benefits the capos and the goddamn dons. Hell, it barely fucking benefits the associates and the goddamn and the maid men. So the maid men, the associates, they get a little taste, right? But they always got to kick up to the capos, and guess what? The capos always got to kick up to the dons. So that's how the government works. You understand what I'm saying? Except, at least with the La Cosa Nostra, at least they don't give the illusion that they have these three branches that share power. No. It's all the executive branch, right? The La Cosa Nostra is all executive branch. That's just what it is, right? It is one branch. So think of the La Cosa Nostra as a one-branch government, and think of the government as a three-branch crime family. Think of that. It works together, right? They operate in the same way, right? They operate in the same way. The La Cosa Nostra and the United States government are structured similarly. And not just the United States government, any government, whether it be a totalitarian government, whether it be a dictatorship, whether it be a socialist, communist, they're all crime families. Very few people within government or within these countries that are governed, very few elites, individuals have any level of power and freedom. They don't fall under the same rules. They don't have to follow the same rules or the same laws. This is what it is. Sunshine says, to be honest, it will take outside fist to get any type of power back to the land's rightful owners. I agree. It's going to take, it's going to take some alliances, right? But then you have to worry about what those alliances are going to cost. You know what I'm saying? Shaw Kinlan says the foot soldier, exactly. Sunshine says all governments were set up via legal acts and horrific atrocities to the group or groups of people they rule over. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Everybody gets shaken down. It's all extortion, right? It's all RICO. Only difference is some governments are poorer than others. Yep. You have 3-branch crime family. That's exactly what government is, right? Like, except, in the mafia, you have, like I said, it's all enforcement, right? You have the chief executive, which is the Don, and you have his enforcers, right? From the capos on down. There is no judicial. There is no motherfucking goddamn legislative. They make all the rules, right? All the rules, all the laws, all the customs of the crime families are created and enforced by one entity. So, yeah, I mean, look, man, that's just what it is. Like, we had to wake up and come to this conclusion before it just gets worse for us, okay? That's all I got to say for now, man. But y'all get what I'm saying. Appreciate y'all for coming through and listening. Much love. Like, share, subscribe, and let's keep marching forward toward freedom. Peace.